We are trying this again. We've had technical difficulties this morning. Welcome, everyone. Um, I was just saying, with this pandemic and our new reality that we're all facing, I feel like it's hit me and my family kind of in stages. Last night at the dinner table, we were all talking, and it's just at first I thought, I can do that. I live in yoga pants or sweatpants half the time anyway. And so, and I don't think I expected for it to kind of continue on this long. And so, driving around last weekend and seeing people in masks around town, and just, it felt like an absolute ghost town. Um, I feel like it started to really hit me. It's just a weird time, and I don't know if any of us could truly, um, I don't know. We've never been through anything like this. So how do you adjust when everything is, it's our new normal? And so I hope you guys are hanging in there. I know my kids are being troopers, and we were talking about that last night at the dinner table. My 13, well, she turns 13 this week. It's Kailani's birthday and McKenna's birthday. They both turned 15 and 13. So, she was saying, I'm okay with it. It's weird, but and we were talking about the fact that, they've been through so much in their lives that this is just another bump in the road. I don't know how your kids are holding up. It's got to be hard for everybody. So, yay, you're back. Good morning. We had technical difficulties, and thank you all for signing back in and trying again. You're struggling with school. I know especially, I keep thinking about it. I have a friend, and he's a single dad, and he has 3 kids. Well, I guess he's not a single dad anymore. He recently remarried, but she's got 1 and he's got 3, and they're all under, except for one of them, they're all under the age of 10. And so my heart goes out to anyone who has the little ones who really need a lot of direction, especially when you are, trying to hold down a job or get things done. I just, Houston, Texas. Hi, good morning. I love seeing where everybody's from. I want to start off by saying I am not an attorney. I cannot give legal advice. What I do try to do is share what I am, what I've been through, or what I see other people going through and their experiences. Other times I can say, I can't give legal advice, but if I were in your shoes, these are probably some things I would consider doing. And so, that's kind of my fine print. I want to be really clear. I'm not an attorney, not qualified to give legal advice. So some of the questions that were submitted fell into that category. So I either got too many questions and I couldn't get to all of them today, or they are just beyond my scope of what I feel comfortable answering. Calgary, Canada. That's so cool. Good morning. So I want to go through, if you are interested in submitting questions for next Saturday, go ahead. You can email coffeedatewithtina@gmail.com. You're going to get an auto response. I promise I get every single one of them. I just don't have the capacity to always write back. So consider that my thank you. Make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel. So I have some really exciting content coming out. I think it's going to be next week, around the 24th. I did an hour and a half of a YouTube, it was actually Zoom meeting with Dr. Romani and also Rebecca Zung, who is one of the top 1% attorneys in the United States. Dr. Romani is one of my absolute heroes in this movement, and I first connected with her yes, I love Dr. Romani too. She's brilliant. I first connected with her in November, and I think it was just shortly after she did the Red Table Talk with Jada Pinkett Smith. And I got invited by my friend Tanya, who's a therapist down in Los Angeles, to attend a dinner with a bunch of mental health professionals to talk about narcissistic personality disorder. And I'm going to admit, I was a little terrified. I was absolutely terrified. And part of it is my own trauma from, I was very blessed that I did have a handful of therapists who really got what I was going through, but I found that most just didn't. And a lot of them made the issues even worse. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here that so many of you have experienced family court professionals who just don't get it. But when they're mental health professionals and you're depending on them to get it, they don't receive the training. They just don't. And so I have found that the only people who truly get it, even in the mental health realm, are the ones who have personally experienced it in some area of their life, whether they were groomed by a parent or they've been through this type of relationship. So, things have unfolded, and I've seen Dr. Romani speak. And what I said to somebody the other day while describing her is that when she's talking to you, she is truly talking to you into your soul. She is so caring and compassionate that people feel instantly heard and validated, and you can almost see the healing begin for them right before your eyes. It's truly rare, and if you are not following her work, please do. She's going to move mountains, and I think she is going to be instrumental in training other mental health professionals to really get this disorder. That was a topic when I was meeting with these group of therapists. We do it on Zoom now, just yesterday, and they were saying, what does it mean to get it? We all use that term, but let's define it. And I think, it is so rare to find somebody who gets it. And so when I met with them down in November in Los Angeles, or back in November in Los Angeles, I just remember I was terrified walking into that room. And so when it was time for introductions, and I hate speaking publicly. Gigi says, I have a psychology degree and former paralegal. Yeah, they're not taught, they're not understood. I remember asking to go first just because I wanted to get it over with, and I thought I was going to throw up. And so I stood up and introduced myself, and I shared, this is a big moment for me because a lot of my trauma from my 10-year child custody battle comes from people in your profession who just don't get it. And so it's been an honor to be a part of this group, and our group now has a name, and we're going to be doing things out there. So, but back to my original point, stay tuned. If you aren't subscribed, please make sure you're subscribed. I'll be sharing, it's going to be a 2-part series with Dr. Romani and Rebecca Zung, and it's going to be my journey through the court system, but weaving into it the legal perspective from Rebecca, and then also the psychological perspective of what's happening when we are going through a divorce or a custody battle with these individuals. So I have never been so excited about a project, and I think it's going to help so many people. So I'm excited for you guys to all see it. So, and please share the heck out of it. What questions can we ask to determine who gets it? And will this eliminate those who say they do and they don't? For me, so am in a position to where, here's an example I recently shared. I started with a new therapist for EMDR last year, and I did 5 or 6 sessions. It was life-changing for me. But on one of the final sessions, which was not supposed to be my final session, and I might have shared this in a previous video, but I was sitting there, and at the end of the session, she said, he loves them in his own way. And I think I saw red. I was like, no, he doesn't. He's not capable of loving them. And I am sure in hell not going to teach my daughters that that's what love is. So that was my last session with that therapist, and I found a new therapist. So much of it for me is, the dynamics of domestic violence and NPD are intertwined. It's control, it's the need to win, it's the need to hurt you. So for me, it's finding, even if it's a trauma informed therapist, somebody who that is their specialty. EMDR has been life-changing for me. I know Dr. Ramani said she invites narcissists to a dinner party because it keeps it interesting. I know a lot of the work that she does is with narcissists, and you cannot find a better subject. If you have one in your office, the learning that you can get from that person is invaluable, and especially if they know that that is their issue and they're willing to openly talk to you about it, which I had an experience. He was diagnosed antisocial, but I had an encounter with somebody who was very open with me, and truly chilling, fascinating to hear somebody talk openly about what it's like. I've never heard of ART. But going back to EMDR, I was actually warned heavily against doing it by a mental health professional that I love and trust. And the reason was because I have had so much trauma in my life that they thought it's just not smart. You could possibly be opening up all types of boxes that don't need to be opened right now because you're already going through a lot. I went ahead and did it anyway, and I'm incredibly grateful. It desensitized me. I don't know. I still don't even understand it, but I understand it enough to know how much it's helped me. And for example, my ex-mother-in-law, who is probably one of my biggest triggers, she, my custody battle was against her. And I ran into her. It wasn't a great experience, but I didn't do what I normally would do, which is, when we think fight or flight, I ran. That episode, I wish I would have handled myself better, but I didn't run, so we'll leave it at that. But let's get into some of the questions that have been sent to me. Can you give me some advice on how to deal with my teenage son who, since the school closure, has not been coming with me during my custodial time? My ex-husband is enabling him to do this and undermining me when I try to set rules and limits. Is there any way I can make my ex-husband legally responsible for enforcing our court order? I don't know what state you're in. I know that everything I'm reading really says you are still bound by the court order. I know other people in situations like this who have filed contempt charges against the other party. But if I were personally in your shoes dealing with this situation, I would make sure, number one, that I am presenting myself to be very, very healthy. Sorry, Richard, I don't know who you are, but I am giving you information to get a hold of me. You're welcome to do that or submit a question. So, it's you can look up the laws or the guidance that is being provided right now and reach out to if you have an attorney, ask them how to enforce it. But one of the things that's so important is how you present yourself in the communication to build your case. So I would be, ensuring that I looked like the best co-parent that I could possibly, be, and putting that in writing, hey, I want to check in with you. I haven't seen little Johnny, for 3 weeks. I have missed 3 of my custodial times. This is not acceptable. Here's an example of what the governor's orders say or our local court system orders, have mandated, and so really being clear without attacking, without coming across as angry. Present as a healthy co-parent. My mentality has always been, I'm not going to pay attention who's on the other side. I need to stay authentic and true to who I am as a person. And if the other person was healthy, I would be the best co-parent that they have ever seen. And so I maintain that, kind of keeping in mind that everything I write is to the court. If I am writing something to my ex-husband and I'm giving him that energy or thinking of him as the recipient, my words aren't going to come out as well as they would if I were writing to the judge. So that's my mentality, writing to the judge. So yeah, she said, yes, I would love to co-parent with a healthy person. Towards the end of my custody battle, when I had become educated on how important strategy was, that was kind of the mindset. It was almost as if I was role playing. I pretended when I was communicating that the parent on the other side, with reason, I still held boundaries and I didn't engage and I wasn't emotional, but I, almost pretended that the other parent was healthy, because it helped me to keep my communication in check. And it helped, when the court read these things, that I presented as the non-conflict in this situation. So I, make sure in writing you are truly documenting these things. I know law enforcement really isn't getting involved, and I don't know how old your child is. And, I know every state has different laws, and so depending on the age of your child, some may carry their own desires may carry a heck of a lot of weight, and that is one of the most difficult situations. I would say the 2 most difficult situations are co-parenting with a baby or a toddler involved because they're nonverbal, and almost equal is the teenagers because they're easily bought and manipulated with the next shiny iPhone or car or whatever it is, and they usually have a say. I know Oregon is one state where they don't ever take their word into consideration, so you would probably have a more solid platform in a state like that. But I know in California, 14 is kind of the magic age. And then in the reverse situation, I have another question that says that, I'll sum it up. Basically, dad is not abiding by any of the quarantine rules, having parties or going to parties, traveling, really being unsafe. And so she is withholding. uh, him having visitation. And her question is, should I file first or should I wait for him to file contempt charges? That's another question that kind of falls into the legal category. Um, I'm not qualified to answer that, but if I were in a similar situation, same type of thing, I would be working to build my case. When it comes to strategically communicating the issues that I see and trying to work with the other co-parent, presenting myself in that really positive light. But I know for me personally, I would probably file for modification rather than be in contempt if I thought the other side was truly going to hold me in contempt. Um, because I'd much rather be preemptive than operating from a place of defense, especially if I were the one violating the court order. Um, that can be a scary situation to be in. Um, one of the things that I was so careful to do is keep my side of the street sparkling clean, and I never deviated from the order. But this is an unusual circumstance that none of us have ever faced. So I have a lot of empathy for where you are in your position and where you're coming from. Next question is, I am in pro se. Basically, for those who don't know, self-represented, can't afford an attorney. That's the position I personally found myself in throughout the vast majority of my 10-year battle. And so she's, looking for input. She has trial coming up and whenever the court's open. But what are some tips for what I did personally? She's wondering, how do I find case law? One of the things that I think we have access to now that I didn't back then, there's programs online like Upwork, with it's UP and then work. I think it's upwork.com, and they have independent contractors, paralegals, things like that. Find one in your state who can just research case law specific to your case. You can get that done pretty cheap. Or if there's a paralegal in your area who maybe does work on the side and maybe knows your local system better. Another thing I did when I did a 2-day trial by myself, and one of the most difficult things I've ever done in my life, I am not going to sugarcoat it. I have my infamous pink binder. It's like that big. And I remember a friend came to court with me and he said, "Your binder terrifies me and I'm never getting married." After watching, that was just crazy. I had color tabs and, it was so much and so overwhelming. So my heart goes out to you. I know what it's like. Another thing that I utilized was an attorney limited scope. I actually found an attorney in my area through my local law hotline. And I don't know if every area has one, but they tried to match people with attorneys, and I found a really nice gentleman, and his wife was his paralegal, and they're very near and dear to my heart to this day. He's retired now, but he did a free consult with me. It wasn't supposed to be free. They ended up waiving it because they felt so sad for me and what I was up against. And so he guided me from behind the scenes on how to properly submit exhibits and pieces of evidence and, procedural things that the judge could not guide me on. So that was something that I found really, really helpful. I know I recommend going to sit in court a lot. So you can learn your local system, but sitting in on, somebody's personal trial, a lot of people don't want to do that. And I get it. It's kind of awkward when it's two people, they're attorneys, and then you in the courtroom and they're going, who is this person? Why is she here? That attorney who helped me ended up being an interesting story because What we know about narcissists is anybody who could help you advance in any area of your life becomes a target. I had to get a court order once that my ex-husband was not allowed to talk to my boss, because he had run into him at community gatherings and would try to engage him in our divorce. And the judge basically told him, if you cause her to lose her job, you will be on deck to pay her salary. And that stopped that. But one of the things that my ex did also, lawyer, procedural assistance behind the scenes. Um, I don't know if that's an organization, but definitely look into that as well. When my ex found out that this attorney was helping me behind the scenes, he started calling their office and telling the attorney's wife to be careful because I would try to have sex with him. Um, Trying to warn the attorney about how manipulative I was and that I was going to try to screw him. It was humiliating. And I ended up in that situation. I was so new into it. And I ended up just completely pulling away from that attorney because I did not want innocent people affected. It was just, it's humiliating. And I just thought, no, these poor people are so sweet and they're trying to help me. And I can't involve them in this. And I still am in communication with them and they're wonderful people. Mediation. My last question, somebody wanted to know, how do I prepare for mediation? A lot of people will say that mediation with a narcissist is completely pointless and a waste of time and energy. There are some states that you are forced to go into mediation. California is one of those. Even if somebody thinks it's pointless, your hands are tied. You don't have a choice. And so, for me, I personally don't think that mediation is pointless. I think, if you can get your mind into a strategic space, it gives you an opportunity to see what their cards are, to see what your leverage is. And it gives you practice presenting your case to a neutral third party who doesn't know either of you. And so, whether that's desensitizing yourself to it or, just a practice run, it can be really, really helpful. And the one thing I would recommend, I go into mediation very prepared. And if you can, put a list together of all of the items that are on the agenda to be decided and start with the little ones that you think you could possibly come to an agreement on and tick off. Because that would be the goal. Any areas where you can say, you know what, let's agree to this. But then on each point, I would just go in with a one-page Word document with bullet points and use that as almost my roadmap. And so if we got off track, I would try to bring it back. And you have to go into it knowing in every single category where your break point is, where your sweet spot is, where, you just say, okay, it's not perfect, it's not ideal, but I can live with this. And for me, I know that money is my ex-husband's biggest button. So that was my leverage in those situations was, and I've even talked to a lot of clients who have gotten the other side to agree. When it comes to 50-50 custody, we know that the reason they fight for that, it's usually a couple of things. One, to hurt you. Two, it's a badge of honor for them to be able to say, I have 50-50 custody. That means I'm a great person. They really, just like they used you for image and for people to think they're a good person, they do that with the 50-50 badge of honor. And the other one is child support. If it's 50-50, they're going to owe less child support and control. Exactly. So, knowing those things is, strategy. It's important. And to go in there and go, okay, I know people who have said, I hear that you want 50-50, and maybe we'll work to that over time. Right now, I don't feel it's in the kids' best interest. So listen, I'm willing to put 50-50 on paper when it comes to financial calculations, but let's keep the schedule where it is right now. I know a lot of people who have done that because it's calling their bluff. Most of these people who are in the cluster B category are really they're selfless. Parenting can be tedious, and they don't really want to be a parent 50% of the time. And so that doesn't apply to everybody. There are some who are going to go, gung ho. They really want 50-50 custody, but there are others where you can use those strategies to kind of offset it. So I have several of my clients who have done that where they, let's keep it 50-50 for financial calculations, but let's do 70-30. And what you find, even if you get 50-50, is that a lot of them slowly drop off. Hey, I can't make it next weekend. I've got a work obligation or whatever it is. And so that's pretty much the reality of what you're up against is they really don't want it. They're not capable of it. So we are out of time. I know YouTube cuts me off somewhere around this point, so I'm going to use this opportunity to say happy Saturday. Thanks so much for joining me, and we'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.